Welcome to Lesson 3 in a three-part series titled Three Massive Mistakes in Lean Material Flow. I'm Richard Rahn, and in this lesson we'll tackle the third massive mistake, a failure to create a plan for every part. This topic is pretty much what the title says it is, the creation of a detailed plan for every item that you'll need to manage within your target area. The target area could be the entire factory, which of course is your long-term goal, but it could also be an implementation project that you're working on, like a new production line or even a small production cell. So we'll go over the different types of plans that you'll need to develop in a minute. But first, let's answer the question you may have, aren't we doing this already? What is this massive mistake? Well, let's clarify the difference between ordinary planning and what we're talking about here. I'm going to assume that your company already has a manufacturing system of some kind. There are a lot of software choices for ERP or MRP systems. The biggest players include SAP and Oracle, but there are dozens, maybe even hundreds of systems. At heart, they all include some basic functionality, including the following modules: an item master module where you define and store characteristics of parts, a purchasing module to manage supplier-related information, an inventory control module to track quantities and locations, a master schedule module to capture demand-related information, and many other submodules that perform various manufacturing-related calculations or functions. So, you have everything you already need, right? Use your system and you automatically have a plan for every part, or so it would seem. Well, not exactly, and here are the problems. First, there may be data elements that you do want to track, but they're not in your legacy manufacturing system. You may, for example, want to analyze materials based on a Kanban strategy, and that functionality isn't included. Now, second, and more importantly, the data that you need in a legacy ERP system is scattered all over the place within the various modules that we just discussed. Even if it's all there somewhere, it's hard to find and even harder to manipulate, sort, filter, and organize in one place. Now, could a large ERP system provide this kind of functionality? Well, probably. And if yours does, well, congratulations. You can move directly to step 3. But chances are that it does not. And you're going to need a different tool. Now, let me say up front, we're not big fans of running large companies with spreadsheets. Data is not as secure, it's harder to share, files get lost, data validation's not as good. But the spreadsheet tool is the most flexible for what we need for a plan for every part. That is, a data repository where you can easily see everything in one place. It's easy to filter, it's easy to sort, it's easy to add additional columns as needed. So here are the steps to developing a plan for every part. Step 1, define the information needed for export into a spreadsheet. And this data falls into several logical categories, and you'll probably need some IT help to locate it and create a download file. In order to not get totally overwhelmed with data, let's focus on retrieving those items you will definitely need. So here are the basic categories. First, part-related data. This information will come primarily from the item master table and includes all active part numbers and descriptions. Other characteristics of a part will include the commodity code, ABC code, the container type, the weight, key dimensions, special handling codes, nesting characteristics, and unit cost. Feel free to add to this list as long as it is data that you will use. Next, supplier-related data. Supplier information may not be a one-to-one relationship to a part since you could have multiple suppliers for the same item. Nevertheless, capture here your key supplier or key suppliers, their physical distance from the place of use, their standard package quantity, carrier information, their supplier certification status, on-time delivery score, ability to respond to pull signals, and so on. Next, inventory-related data. In this section, you'll want to retrieve data regarding on-hand inventory quantities, as well as your current storage locations. Now, being able to compare current inventory quantities with future planned quantities can be a great way to justify the project effort, assuming, of course, that the inventory goes down. Current storage locations may also change in the future, but this is a good starting point. Capture here current usage data also, consumption in units per day, per week, or per month. So that's a good start, but as I said, add any data that will be useful in your analysis and planning efforts. Once we have the data, you can start planning. Now, this may sound a bit daunting if you have thousands of part numbers, but fortunately parts fall into logical groupings. And if you plan well for one item in a group, like say fasteners, then the remaining items will be very similar or identical. So, what do you do when you plan? Well, you need to complete the blank columns in your plan for every part spreadsheet with the following types of information: container types and quantities, inventory levels, that's planned inventory levels at each storage location and supermarket, standard pack quantities, delivery methods and strategies, the replenishment signal methods including Kanban, conveyance methods like tuggers, fork trucks, AGVs, and so on, and line ready status when you're all done with the part, just to signal as a flag that this part is ready for implementation. So our recommendation is to start with a controlled area. Do a 100% job of planning for every part in that area, and then continue to the next logical area. So don't jump around, especially if you have a lot of parts to plan for. So 3 final suggestions on the topic of plan for every part. Point number 1, put someone in charge of your PFEP database or spreadsheet and run all changes through that person. Allowing different people to actually make changes is a recipe for disaster. People can use the file in read-only mode, but have a single point of responsibility for actually making changes. Now, point number 2, use the Plan for Every Part database for continuous improvement, not just for a new project. This should not be a one-time only effort where you then discard the spreadsheet. Use it to continually refine and improve your material flow system. And point number 3, upload important information back to your main ERP system. Now, remember that the ERP system is the quote-unquote real data, and you don't want it to be out of sync with your Plan for Every Part spreadsheet. Okay, well, that was a whirlwind tour of the subject of Plan for Every Part, and now some of you might be thinking that, well, that was pretty basic. In fact, we often get feedback along the lines of, thank you for your simple introduction to the subject of XYZ. Of course, there's more to say about Plan for Every Part, but also appreciate the fact that Lean is actually pretty simple. Pig-headed determination and discipline are more important than a complicated and sophisticated method. And maybe that's why it's rare, at least for us, to find companies that are using the Plan for Every Part process fully. Okay, I'll be following up with one last video in a few days to wrap up the topic of the 3 massive mistakes. So we'll see you then.